So everyone loves eating homemade pie, but not everyone likes making it. And that's because between rolling out the pie dough and fitting it to the pie plate, there's a lot that can go wrong. And we had one of our online cooking school students named George write to us and ask us about pie making. He said, I always have trouble rolling out pie dough evenly and an even harder time transferring the thin dough to the pie plate without tearing or ripping it. Do you have any tips?
We have tons of tips, and we've made tons of pie dough here in the test kitchen. And I bet George is not the problem here. It's probably the recipe he's using. Too often recipes produce doughs that are really hard to roll out. They crumble, they tear, even for an experienced baker. And the number one problem with these is too little water added to the recipe.
Right, and while adding more water to the dough will make it easier to work with, it will also make it bake up tough. And that's because the water will activate the gluten in the flour. So instead of adding more water, we actually found an unlikely ingredient in our liquor cabinet that makes the dough really easy to work with, and it also bakes up really flaky and light.
Yep, it's 80 proof vodka. Not too typical for a pie dough. But what's happening here is that the vodka is actually 60% water and 40% alcohol. So you can use more liquid in the pie dough, but you're activating less gluten. So between the vodka, which makes a pie dough that's nice and light and tender, and some chilled fat, of course we're using butter and shortening here, we can create nice flaky layers.
So once you've followed our recipe for foolproof pie dough, here's how you roll it out.
You start off with laying the dough on a floured counter and then roll it outward from the very center. A lot of bakers will roll back and forth, but that can lead to an oval-shaped as opposed to a perfectly circular dough. And you'll get a dough that's a lot thinner in the center and then thicker at the edges. Not good. And most rolling methods call for turning the dough 180 degrees after a few rolls, but we found that a much less drastic turn makes for much more even crust. How about that? So we turn the dough 90 degrees or a quarter of a full rotation after just a few rolls. And then we continue to do this until the dough grows to be a perfect 12-inch circle.
So then what about the most intimidating part of making pie at home? And that is transferring the pie dough to the pie plate.
Yeah, well, we actually have a very easy way to manage that whole operation. And you start at the edge of the dough and loosely roll it right around your pin, and then unroll it back over the pie dish. So now you don't need to run the risk of stretching or tearing that dough by picking it up with your hands. And at this point, you can use that pie dough to make a pie with a beautiful fluted or ridged edge, or you can double the recipe and make a double crust pie, or even one with a lattice top. So if you want to learn more about how to make pies, how to roll them out, fill them, eat them, you can check out our online cooking school. There's tons of great recipes, like our deep dish apple pie. It's fantastic. And lots of techniques and tips as well, so you no longer have to avoid making pie or any other food in the kitchen.
Happy cooking.